2 weeks. So here we talk about real transformation, how food, fasting, and lifestyle can change your hormones, your metabolism, and even um, your longevity, right? Because we really care about actually having a healthy life. I think I've talked about this before with Peter Attia, where he talks about longevity of life, where um, you can go from a long, like healthy life in your 20s, and then you just slow decline, right? So that slow decline actually is what's happening to most of Americans because they don't understand what highly processed foods are, how they're poisoning their bodies and what they're doing to it. So I'm trying to help you guys understand why we have these troubles with our bodies and high blood pressure and high triglycerides and diabetes and everything else that's going on. So I'm going to talk about today I'm going to talk about salt. So I'm going to talk about why high blood pressure and all this is going on. And it's not really from salt. So let's dig in. Okay. So you can listen to my podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch it on YouTube and on Facebook, Instagram, and you can follow along on TikTok as well. And there's also behind the scenes tips, recipes, and insights from my coaching practice there as well. So if you're ready to personalize your nutrition, visit larsonhealthweightloss.com to learn more about my programs and hormone support meal plans. So from salt is bad to salt is smart. Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood nutrients in modern health, salt. So, for decades, salt has been demonized, right? Doctors and dietitians told us to cut down on sodium if you wanted to protect our hearts, right? But salt became the villain, the supposed cause of high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. But the more we look at the science, the clearer it becomes. That narrative was far too simplistic. Sodium isn't the villain, it's actually vital to life. It regulates nerve function, muscle contraction, and fluid balance. I can tell you that I take probably 2,000 milligrams of salt a day just in my water because it has a bunch of electrolytes in it. And that's what I want to get for my body to stay fluid and healthy. So, without enough sodium, your brain can't fire signals properly. Your muscles cramp up, your blood pressure can actually drop too low. And here's the kicker: too little sodium can be just as dangerous as too much. In fact, one of the largest studies ever done on this topic of salt, whether you have too much or too little, is the Pure study. It was published in the Lancet in 2018. They followed over 95,000 adults across 21 countries. This is worldwide. And they found what they found turned decades of salt fear on its head. So the researchers discovered a J-shaped curve, meaning that cardiovascular risk was lowest at moderate sodium intake levels and increased not only when sodium was high, but also when sodium was too low. So both extremes, too much or too little, increased cardiovascular risk. And what this tells us is that the human body is designed for balance. It's not deprivation. It comes with food, it comes with salt. But I can tell you with all the packaged foods that are out there, they're loaded with sodium, they're loaded with toxic items, they're loaded with just a bunch of junk. I know somebody, and he'll know who I'm talking about, where, he goes from one canned food to another canned food because it was on sale. Now, I understand that sometimes you need to do that, but if you're eating protein and vegetables, it is affordable. Or if you're eating mostly vegetables and getting some beans and rice are a complete protein, and that is really affordable compared to buying junk in a can that's not even real meat or protein. Look at the labels, see how much protein is in it. So your human body is designed for balance and not deprivation, right? And it's functional nutrition. That's exactly what we look for is balance, not restriction. I never count calories. I can tell you, I never count calories. I put healthy foods into my body. I treat my body like it's the temple that it is because it carries me throughout my life. And I don't want a long decline of pain and misery. I'm going to live a good, healthy life and then I'm going to fall off and die. And that's going to be it. And I'll probably live to my 90s. So, how did salt become public enemy number one in the first place? It all started in the 1970s when a researcher named Louis Dahl ran experiments on salt sensitive rats. These rats were genetically predisposed to hypertension, meaning their kidneys and vascular systems didn't respond to salt the way most human bodies do. So when he fed them high salt diets, their blood pressure shot up. Those findings sparked decades of fear based on dietary advice, even though follow up studies later showed that only a subset of humans are actually salt sensitive. In fact, somewhere between 25 to 50% of the population experiences significant changes in blood pressure. Ooh, get my little head. In blood, so changes in blood pressure when sodium intake changes, while the rest of us are relatively salt resistant. A comprehensive review in the Journal of Hypertension in 2017 confirmed that salt sensitivity varies widely among individuals and depends heavily on insulin resistance, age, kidney function, and genetics. So when you hear someone say everyone needs to eat low sodium, remember the science doesn't support that. Human biology is far more nuanced. So let's talk about insulin resistance, the real culprit behind high blood pressure. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. What if the problem isn't salt at all, but insulin? When insulin levels are elevated, which happens when we eat too many refined carbohydrates or live in a state of chronic stress, our kidneys respond by retaining sodium. This leads to increased fluid retention and higher blood pressure. So think about when you put on like warm socks for the winter and you wake up in the morning and your leg looks like it's been squeezed and you've got a lot of fluid retention. So I could tell you for Halloween, like I had too much candy. So and I could see it when I was trying to go to put my socks on. There was just I had some fluid retention. So, thankfully, that's all gone, and we gave it all away, and I won't be eating any more of that garbage. So, a classic study published in Hypertension back in 1993 showed that when researchers infused insulin into healthy individuals, sodium excretion in the urine dropped dramatically. The body literally held onto sodium because of the insulin. That's a huge insight because it means high insulin, not just salt, may be the real reason so many people struggle with hypertension. So, later studies in the American Journal of Physiology and the Journal of Clinical Investigation confirm that insulin acts on the kidney's sodium transponders, signaling them to retain sodium in water. At the same time, insulin activates the sympathetic nervous system. That's the same system that triggers your fight or flight response. That causes blood vessels to constrict, which raises your blood pressure even more. So, if your fasting insulin levels are high, your body's sodium regulation is already compromised, regardless of how much salt you sprinkle on your food. In this context, telling someone to cut salt without addressing their blood sugar and insulin response is like mopping up a flooded floor without turning off the faucet. So let's talk about the potassium connection. Let's bring in another key mineral that often gets ignored. So, potassium is like sodium's natural counterbalance. It helps your kidneys flush out excess sodium and relaxes your blood vessels, making it easier for blood to flow. A 2013 meta analysis in the BMJ looked at over 128,000 people and found that increasing potassium intake significantly lowered both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, particularly in people eating higher sodium diets. And then there's the famous DASH trials, which stand for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. These were funded by the NIH and published in the New England Journal of Medicine. These were randomized controlled feeding studies, the gold standard in nutrition research. And they found that increased foods rich in potassium, magnesium, and calcium naturally reduced blood pressure, even when sodium intake wasn't severely restricted. And in functional nutrition, we love this approach because it's additive, not restrictive, right? So instead of focusing on what to remove, we focus on what to add back in. When you eat more potassium rich foods like avocados, leafy greens, beans, squash, and yogurt, like squash are really in right now. So are avocados and leafy greens. I mean, we've got Swiss chard that is out there. It's been freezing every single night, and this stuff is tough. It is still growing. It is huge right now. We put lentils in our chili. We just made some chili with some pasture raised turkey and ground beef, and it was delicious. Put some jalapeno peppers in there. We didn't have any habaneros, so we put in some ghost peppers. Woo, it was spicy. And then yogurt. We have yogurt every day. I got some yogurt waiting for me downstairs. And to create the natural sodium potassium balance your body was designed to maintain, right? So when you eat more potassium rich foods with avocados, leafy greens, beans, squash, and yogurt, you create the natural sodium potassium balance your body was designed to maintain. So, how much sodium do you really need? Let's talk about the numbers in context because one size fits all advice doesn't work here either. The American Heart Association recommends staying below 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day, ideally around 1,500 if you already have hypertension. But the Pure study and a 2020 review in JAMA found that the lowest cardiovascular risk actually occurs between 3,000 and 5,000 milligrams per day, especially when potassium intake is adequate and metabolic health is good. So, if you're metabolically healthy and active, which very few Americans are, you may actually need more salt, not less. And if you're an athlete, especially training in the heat, you're losing sodium through sweat, sometimes up to 2 grams per liter. I remember when I was running half marathons and 10-mile races, I would, especially in the summertime in July or August in Chicago, I would actually take salt tablets because I would be so low on sodium, I would start to get lightheaded. I realized this in one of the first races that I did. I was like, why am I so lightheaded? Why do I feel so foggy and tired? It was because my sodium was down. Just drinking straight water does not help, right? It doesn't give you those electrolytes that you need. So, studies in the Journal of Applied Physiology show that endurance athletes can lose 500 to 2,000 milligrams of sodium every hour during intense training. So, your sodium needs rise dramatically with sweat and temperatures. So, the lesson here is that sodium needs are highly individualized. Your diet, environment, training level, and metabolic health are all determinants of your sweet spot. So let's talk about the subtle signs of sodium imbalance. So here's something you can start observing right away. How does your body feel when your sodium balance is off? If you're low in sodium, you might experience dizziness, fatigue, headaches, or brain fog. You might even crave salty foods. Some people notice muscle cramps or nausea after workouts, which I get frequently if I'm not taking enough sodium. And in extreme cases, low sodium can lead to hyponatremia, hyponatremia, which can be dangerous and even life threatening. On the flip side, if your sodium intake is consistently too high, especially from processed foods like canned foods, bread, pasta, cookies, cakes, cupcakes, anything that you find in the aisles is mostly highly processed foods. Maybe if you go buy some frozen vegetables, those are okay. But anything canned, there's all kinds of preservatives in there. There's a lining in the can that is toxic for you. There's all kinds of the government's not looking out for you, okay? I know that they're trying to get it done, but to get it all done in the time frame that's needed is going to be nearly impossible. So there's just so many toxins, the brighteners in the foods that are toxic, the colors that are toxic, and the M&Ms and the foods that just have so many colorants in there, and they use uh, titanium dioxide. They all these things that are just so toxic. So when your sodium is too high, especially with processed foods, you might notice bloating, swelling in your hands or ankles, and constant thirst. But again, it's not just about salt itself, it's about the context of your diet. Are you eating mostly whole foods and staying metabolically flexible? Or are you eating processed meals, hidden sodium sources, and struggling with insulin resistance? Your sodium story always sits inside your metabolic story. Like, what's your gut health like? Are you bloating all the time when you eat? Are you having troubles with leaky gut? And a lot of people don't know what leaky gut is and how it comes about. But eating all these processed foods just eats away at the lining of your gut and causes all kinds of issues. So, does the type of salt matter? Let's talk about something that confuses a lot of people, the type of salt, right? There's sea salt, there's pink Himalayan salt, there's Celtic salt. They all look different, they all have fancy labels, and each claims to be healthier. But the truth is, your body cares about the sodium molecule, not the color of the crystal. Chemically, they're almost identical. Sea salt and Himalayan salt might contain trace minerals like magnesium or calcium, but the quantities are so tiny that they don't they're not meaningfully they're not meaningfully impacting your health or electrolyte balance. So what does matter is whether your salt contains iodine. So, iodized salt was one of the greatest public health achievements of the 20th century. Back in the early 1900s, large parts of the United States, especially inland regions far from the ocean, struggled with something called goiter, which is an enlargement of your thyroid gland, which is right here, caused by iodine deficiency. It was extremely common in areas like the Great Lakes and the Midwest. Then in 1924, the US began fortifying table salt with iodine. Within a generation, cases of goiter and thyroid related disorders plummeted. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has even listed salt iodization as one of the top 10 public health successes of the last century. Nothing that it virtually eliminated endemic goiter in the United States. The World Health Organization calls universal salt iodization the most cost effective measure to prevent and control iodine deficiency worldwide. And the National Institutes of Health points out that people who don't consume iodized salt, like myself, seafood or dairy, which I consume seafood, I just had salmon last night, and I get cottage cheese and yogurt, dairy, still at risk for deficiency even today. And I even get iodine in my multivitamin. So, yes, iodized salt truly was a turning point for public health. And if you're not using iodized salt, you might want to have your thyroid checked and make sure that you're actually getting your thyroid balance. So, I did have Hashimoto's and I had an imbalance in my thyroid. So, I made sure I was getting my iodine. I was taking extra iodine. I made sure that I was getting my dairy and getting my proper nutrients to make sure that I was taking care of my health. Now, I do still have some imbalances, but it's nowhere near. I don't take any medications whatsoever for my thyroid. So, if you're someone who avoids seafood or dairy or primarily uses natural sea salts that aren't fortified, it's a good idea to include iodized salt a few times a week. Your thyroid will thank you for it because iodine is the raw material your body uses to make thyroid hormones like T3 and T4, which control your metabolism, your energy, and even body temperature. And that's really the point. In functional nutrition, we don't villainize salt, we personalize it. We ask, what does your body need? For someone who's iodine deficient, iodized salt can be profoundly healing. For someone eating seaweed or fish regularly, maybe it's less of a concern. It's all about context. So let's talk about the functional nutrition in action, right? Healing naturally. This is where functional nutrition shines. Instead of, just telling people to eat less salt, we ask, why is your body holding on to sodium in the first place? Maybe it's stress hormones. Maybe it's insulin resistance. Maybe it's adrenal fatigue or poor hydration. We look at the body as an interconnected system, not isolated organs, right? It all works together. So, have you ever seen Pandora? This movie Pandora. I mean, it's so true for the human body connecting to the earth and connecting to yourself. When someone with hypertension comes to me, I don't start by cutting salt. I start by balancing blood sugar, improving mitochondrial function, and restoring mineral ratios. When we do that, the body starts to self regulate again. That's how people heal naturally from the inside out. So let's talk about sodium and the future of metabolic health. We're also learning that sodium is much more dynamic than we thought. A fascinating study published in Cell Metabolism in 2017 found that sodium isn't just excreted in urine. The body actually stores and releases sodium through the skin and muscle tissue in cycles, interacting with immune cells and hormones like cortisol and aldosterone. So, this means sodium balance is part of a larger hormonal network involving your immune system, your adrenal glands, and metabolism. It's a reminder that health isn't just about a single nutrient, it's about systems, your whole body systems. So, the takeaway is salt is not evil, it's essential. But it's not just about salt, it's about the environment your salt lives in. If your diet is full of processed foods, refined carbs, donuts and cakes and cookies, and chronic stress, sodium will amplify the problem. But if your diet is built around whole foods, healthy fats like avocado, extra virgin olive oil, nuts and seeds, lean proteins like 97.3 ground beef. Get grass-fed beef if you can. We get it from Walmart, Walmart, or we get it from Aldi. And potassium-rich plants. Sodium becomes your ally. So, what really drives high blood pressure for most people is not salt, but insulin resistance, low potassium, and poor metabolic flexibility. So, instead of cutting salt, focus on what you can add back in: better nutrition, better movement, better sleep, and better stress resilience. That's the heart of functional nutrition. When you start healing your metabolism, your sodium balance and your blood pressure begin to take care of themselves. So, if this episode helped you see salt in a new light, share it with a friend or who's been told to cut salt without ever hearing about insulin or potassium. This is an epidemic in the country where people are eating processed foods. It's okay to occasionally have a cookie or occasionally okay to have a donut, but you don't want to do this every week. You don't want to do this every single day. I always say once a week, you can have your sweet treat. But what you want to do is you want to eat your meal first, have your protein and your vegetables, and then you can have your dessert. So in Europe, what really works for them is that they eat standing up unless it's for dinner. Most of the time they eat standing up and they consume their vegetables first. That's why a lot of times you have a salad first, and then you have your protein and your vegetables, because the salad actually coats your stomach so that everything absorbs slower. So it takes your body time. And then when you eat healthy fats like avocado, nuts and seeds, extra virgin olive oil, and then protein with healthy fats on it, this is something that will actually also fill you up faster. That's a natural GLP-1. You don't need to go out and have these shots and do this quick fix, and then GLP-1s like eat away all of your muscle, right? And we all as we age are declining in muscle anyway. So unless you're lifting weights and unless you're doing yoga or body weight exercises, you are losing muscle. So let's talk about to personalize your nutrition and restore balance naturally. You can visit larsonhealthweightloss.com and keep an eye out for larsonnutrition.com coming soon. It's launching in about 2 weeks, where I'll share evidence based supplements and functional nutrition tools to support your metabolism, your electrolyte balance, and hormone health. I can tell you that I got a new line of skincare because my husband was getting headaches from all the perfumes and everything that's in cosmetics and in the candles and everything else. So I created a serum and I use this every day. I am 57 years old and my skin is glowing and I look great, right? You can't tell that I'm any older or, most people say that they thought I was in my 40s. So I have this great serum. It is all organic ingredients. I have this face cream and this is all organic ingredients. I don't know if you can see that. And then this has all organic ingredients as well. It's yeah, it's kinda well, anyway. And then I'm coming out with I've got a body balm, especially because ski season is coming up. I've got this body balm that's going on. And then I'm gonna do some lip balm. I'm gonna also produce a lot of candles because the holidays are coming and people want gifts. And it's all gonna be natural. It's gonna be organic soy. It's gonna be organic, natural essential oils in it. And so it won't be any toxic air breathing, no toxic imbalances. This is all because of it. These perfumes change our hormones and they cause imbalances in our body. So we really need to make sure that we're watching what we have in our homes, the toxic chemicals in our homes, the toxic chemicals in our foods. All of this stuff causes hormonal imbalances, causes inflammation in our bodies, causes my husband to get headaches. So I just made him a balm that has some nutrients in there that will help him when he gets his headache, and give him some lemon and water. So I just give him some fresh squeezed lemon and into some water, and he drinks that right away, and it helps break it down before he gets a migraine. So I hope this today's session was really helpful for you. And if you want to get some gifts for Christmas, please message me on Facebook or on YouTube, and I can send you some gifts for Christmas. The serum is $29. The face cream is 20, and the body balm. This stuff is amazing for my hands have not been dry or cracked at all. My husband likes it a lot. Is the balm is only $10. So there's some great stocking stuffers for the holidays coming. And if you don't forget to subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, stay curious, stay nourished, and keep healing from the inside out. This is the Larson Health Podcast, and thank you for listening. And don't forget to subscribe. Have a great day.